We've been going through Job. We've primarily been in the first 3 chapters of Job. Okay, we've primarily been in the first 3 chapters. And so what we're discussing were kind of just the initial problems, questions, things like that presented in the book of Job. Okay, why do bad things happen to good people? Okay, why would somebody who is blameless and righteous end up having to go through something as horrible as what Job went through? Both losing all of his wealth, all of his children, and then also losing his health, being stuck with a debilitating illness. Okay, so we kind of discussed all that. So if you missed a couple, okay, I want to just remind you real quick that up on YouTube we have all 4 parts, okay, posted. Okay, so if you want to go back and watch this, go back and rehash some of those things, I encourage you to do so. Okay, they're up there for a reason. Okay, they're up there for you guys. Okay, so if you want to find them on YouTube, just in the search bar, just do B2CSM. Okay, that's our youth channel. Okay, and then on the channel you can find all our videos. We don't have many up right now, and the 4 most recent are the first 4 parts of Job. Okay, so we're in the 5th part right now. Last week we did a Q&A. We had 4 of you guys here. That was a lot of fun. That was great. We missed the rest of you, but now we're getting back into Job. Okay, so we're going to be in Job. We're going to start in chapter 4. We're kind of going to be jumping around. Like I told you guys before, we're doing Job a little bit differently than we've done other books. Okay, so we're not going verse by verse. Okay, there's 42 chapters in Job. Okay, it took me 13 weeks to go through Philippians, which was 4 chapters. So I mean, we're talking about years to get through this book if we went verse by verse. Okay, so we've kind of broke it into different parts. Okay, so the first part, that's why we spent the first part in 4 different parts talking about Job 1 through 3, and now things are really going to kind of pick up. Because what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Job and his 3 friends. And Job has 3 friends who have been sitting with him for a week. Okay, kind of grieving his predicament. Okay, they've just been kind of sitting with him, waiting for him, and then Job breaks the silence with kind of a lament, the fact that he was born. Okay, and we talked about how we've all kind of had that day, right? We've all kind of had that day where we just wish hadn't happened. We wish we hadn't woke up that morning. We wish that, even at times we say to ourselves, I just wish I was dead. I just wish this wasn't happening. It's just been the worst day of my life, right? We've all had that day. We've all had that day where we kind of agree with Job, and we relate with Job that, man, I just wish I hadn't been born for this day, okay? So after Job has kind of broke the silence, and his friends kind of feel free to just kind of speak into Job, okay? And so all 3 of them are going to be throwing essentially the same argument at Job, okay? And so we're going to look at that, but they kind of come at it from different angles. They have different personalities, kind of different ways that they come at it. So we're going to discuss each friend separately, okay? So tonight, if you look at chapter 4, and if your chapters kind of have the headings, we're going to see that Eliphaz, okay, is speaking, okay? So we're going to talk about Eliphaz tonight. So he speaks in chapter 4 and then also in chapter 21. So we're kind of going to bounce between there. We're just going to examine his argument, okay, kind of the perspective that he takes, and then we're going to talk about Job's rebuttal, and then we're going to talk about how we apply this to us, okay, what meaning this has for us, because it's really easy for us when we're reading Job to just kind of get lost in all of the language in it, get lost in the story of it, and never see how it applies to us, never see how this plays into what we go through and what we deal with, and that's what we're wanting to do tonight, okay? And so Eliphaz is going to present some different points. So essentially what I want to do is just kind of talk real kind of 35,000 feet, kind of the broad, generalized version of Eliphaz's argument, and then we're going to kind of look at some of the things that he says that we need to pay attention to, okay? So essentially all 3 of his friends are going to talk about the same thing, okay? The argument that they're going to give to Job is an argument based on whether or not man can really be right before God, okay? And that's something that Eliphaz is actually going to ask in his speech to Job, okay? But essentially, what they are presenting to Job is that the reason why Job is suffering is because he has been wicked. Okay, so because Job has been wicked, God is punishing him, and that is a universal statement. Okay, so anytime anybody is wicked in the eyes of God, they are going to be punished by God. Okay, so this is the concept of fair, isn't it? Okay, so this is a very universal concept of what is fair. Okay, it is only fair that those who are wicked in the sight of God get punished, and those who are not wicked don't get punished. Okay, so are we seeing that? I mean, we all kind of have that concept of fair. We all have, I mean, everybody in here has a sibling, right? Okay, so we all have siblings or friends or different things, but especially with siblings, there's always the concept of fairness. Right? So if I'm getting whooped for doing something bad, he better get whooped too because he was being just as bad. Right? I mean, anybody who has siblings, we can relate with this, yeah? Okay, yeah, we all have that concept of fair. Okay? And that's something that extends far beyond, okay, just a sibling or a friendship or whatever. You know, if we're getting caught speeding, what's the first thing, okay, for those of you that drive, what's the first thing that pops into your mind? I am not the only one speeding out here. Right? Okay? So if you're not a driver, then don't worry, you'll get there. The first time you get pulled over and it's for speeding, the first thing that's going to pop into your mind is, I was not the only one. I just got passed by somebody and you're pulling me. Okay, those are the things that just roll through your mind because we're all wicked. Okay? So it's this concept of fair. What is fair? Because we know something certain about God. Everybody believes this about God. Okay? That God is just. Okay? That God is just. Okay, it's all through the Scripture. In the perfection and holiness of His character, He is just. Okay, so how does the justice of God play into the life of Job? Well, Job's friends just haven't bought into the fact that Job is blameless and upright as he has been called by God in the first 3 chapters. Okay, and so Eliphaz starts his argument, and I want us to look. I want us to look there at verse 17, okay? Verse 17, because this is going to get to the crux of Eliphaz's argument, the focal point, okay? Now, he's talking about a vision that he's had, okay, about where a spirit got past his face in the middle of the night. He was kind of half asleep and half awake, but he was really afraid, and the spirit comes to him and asks him this question: can mortal man be in the right before God? Can a man be pure before his Maker? Even in his servants he puts no trust, and his angels he charges with error. How much more those who dwell in houses of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, who are crushed like the moth. Between morning and evening they are beaten to pieces. They perish forever without anyone regarding it. Is not their tent cord plucked up within them? Do they not die, and that without wisdom? Okay, so let's hear the first part of the major part of Eliphaz's argument. Okay, his argument starts with this: man is wicked. There is no man who can stand before God and say, I am right. Right? Okay, now, do we have a problem with this? Good. Everybody's awake tonight. Do we have a problem with that statement? That there is no man who can be right on his own before God? No. We don't have a problem with this. Because we talk about this all the time. Okay, that man is sinful, man is broken, there is nothing that man does right on his own. So we have no problem with this. Okay, so thus far, we're right there with him, right? We're right there with Eliphaz. We're agreeing with him. We're like, yeah, you go, Eliphaz. Okay, way to go. Okay, but now he gets a little crazy. Okay, here in verse 8. Okay, verse 8. This is what he proposes to Job, and this is where he begins to get off. Now it's going to sound right, but at the heart, it's going to be wrong. Okay, so as for me, okay, it's always good whenever somebody starts arguing, well, if I was in your place, which you're not, but okay, so anyway, sorry, that was a little off, sorry. As for me, I would seek God, and to God would I commit my cause, who does great things and unsearchable, marvelous things without number. He gives rain on the earth and sends waters on the fields. He sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. He frustrates the devices of the crafty, so that their hands achieve no success. He catches the wise in their craftiness, and the schemes of the wily are brought to a quick end. They meet with darkness in the daytime, and grope at noondays in the night. But he saves the needy from the sword of their mouth, and from the hand of the mighty. So the poor have hope, and injustice shuts her mouth. Behold, blessed is the one whom God reproves. Therefore despise not the discipline of the Almighty. For he wounds, but he binds up. He shatters, but his hands heal. He will deliver you from 6 troubles. In 7 no evil shall touch you. I want to go down to the end because he kind of just repeats a lot of stuff. So then at the end he says, behold, this we have searched out. It is true. Hear and know it for your good. Okay. So, what Eliphaz is proposing, okay? What Eliphaz is proposing is this. Do the right things before God. Say you're sorry for what you've done, and God will fix this. Okay? So do you, I want us to hear that again, and then I want you to think in your own, okay, what's wrong with that? Okay? Because here's what Eliphaz is saying. You've been wicked. Okay? And when you're wicked, God is going to attack you like this. So what you need to do is repent, and God will fix it. Okay? So do right, and God will be good to you. Do we hear what's wrong there? Because here's the thing. If we really pay attention, this gets preached a lot in today's church. I mean, there are pastors that every Sunday, this is what they're getting up and teaching their congregations. You find them a lot on TV, too. That if you are good, then good will happen to you. Okay? Now, if we think about this, okay, this is really close, and essentially is the same thing. It's just we put God and Jesus in with ours. But it's essentially a Christian karma. Anyone know what karma is? Okay.
If you do something bad will happen to you.
Exactly. You do something bad's going to happen to you. But if you do something good, then something good's going to happen to you. Okay, so we try and do a lot of really good things so that a lot of other good things happen to us. And we try to avoid the bad things. If we do bad things, then bad things are going to happen to us. Okay, it's kind of this whole circle of life type deal. Okay? It's a very New Age, very, Hindus and Buddhists, all they kind of throw it all in there, okay? But it's this idea of karma that if you do good, then good's going to happen. If you do bad, bad happens. So this is Eliphaz's argument. Okay, that Job, you have done bad. Obviously, because bad things are happening. Now, what's wrong with that? We just talked about it. What's wrong with that? Job hasn't done anything wrong. Okay? Job has not done anything wrong. He's been called by God blameless and upright. Now, if God's saying that about God doesn't lie, right? God's not a liar. Okay, and God's really not trying to build Job's self-esteem. He's not even saying it to Job. Okay, so God isn't just kidding when He's saying these things. So Job hasn't done wrong, but this is what Eliphaz bases his argument, because the presupposition, what Eliphaz is coming in with, is the idea that nature works in such a way that good happens to good people and bad happens to bad people. Okay. A couple of other problems that we have is when he talks about the poor. Right? He talks about how God saves the needy from the sword, okay, and from the hand of the mighty. Do we have problems with this? When we look back at history, do we have problems with this? Yes. Okay, because usually, and especially historically, if you were poor, I mean, you were probably going to die. Right? I mean, there was no hope coming for you. Right? I mean, let's think about the Middle Ages, right? If you're a servant of somebody, okay, and there's war that happens, who's the first ones that get out? Who's the first one that they send out? If you're a lord, do we know our history here? No, we don't. Do we know our history? What's that? The poor people, right? Okay, so if a lord trying to protect his castle, he gets all of his serfs together, the poor ones who don't have any land, don't have anything to lose, well, we have everything to lose, okay, and he sends them out first. Why? Because they're cheap. Okay, so we have monumental problems with this ideology, with this concept that of this kind of karma thing that happens. That, oh, if you're just doing good, and especially if you're poor, then God's going to take care of you. That's not always the case, is it? So there's got to be more. Okay, but then we come to real problems whenever he finishes his statement. Okay, and the problem is that we don't see it as a real problem, because here's what I've known in the history of my reading Job. Okay, I've really had a hard time with the arguments of his friends because they say a lot of things that sound really right. Right? Because, I mean, look at the first thing he says in trying to push Job in the right direction as he sees it is, as for me, I would seek God. I mean, yeah. Right? Of course, yeah, let's seek God. And I would commit, and to God I would commit my cause. Okay? Because He does great things. He does marvelous things without number. Okay? He gives rain and all these things. So what I would do is I would go to God and I would do something for Him so that He would be in your debt to do something good to you. And we don't like to put it in that language. But that's what Eliphaz is proposing here. Listen, go to God. Say you'll be good. Find a cow. Sacrifice it, and then all of this will change. Okay? Let me put this in 2012 language. Okay, you get a bad grade. Okay, you have a bad day. I know what I'll do. I'll go to church. And the next day, great. Or you know what? I'll go home and I'll read my Bible. That'll fix it. If you've been through that cycle long enough, if you've tried that method of making your life better by doing things for God, eventually you've come to the point where you realize it's not working. Things are still bad. Okay? So Eliphaz's initial argument, listen, and this is really going to be the theme of their arguments. They're just going to kind of come at it from different angles and kind of, and then there are going to be different types of harshness with Job. You know, Eliphaz was pretty gentle at the beginning. We're going to see his tone change. Okay, so let's go to chapter 21. Okay, this is Eliphaz part 2. He kind of has to listen for a little while until some of the other guys have their turn to talk, and he listens to Job. Did I say 21 or 22?
You said 21.
Okay, 22, sorry. Okay, so Eliphaz has been, again, he's been patiently waiting, okay, so he's gone through a couple of other friends, and he's gone through a couple of times when Job has responded to his friends and different things, okay? So now it's Eliphaz's turn again, okay? So again, his whole thing is that Job must be wicked. Okay, so that's always the presupposition that he's coming with, is that Job must be wicked. Okay, so now he's going to really, he's done with the games, and he's going to really just kind of go after Job. Okay, so we're going to start in verse 2. Can a man be profitable to God? Surely he who is wise is profitable to himself. Is it any pleasure to the Almighty if you are in the right, or is it gain to Him if you make your ways blameless? Is it for your fear of Him that He reproves you and enters into judgment with you? Is not your evil abundant? There is no end to your iniquities. For you have exacted pledges of your brothers for nothing, and stripped the naked of their clothing. You have given no water to the weary to drink, and you have withheld bread from the hungry. The man with power possessed the land, and the favored man lived in it. You have sent widows away empty, and the arms of the fatherless were crushed. Okay, so again, these guys are a little bit off, aren't they? I mean, that's a pretty rough list there. Okay, so Eliphaz is done with the games, and he's really going after Job now, and so he's listing off a bunch of different sins and wickedness, okay, that would provoke God to such a degree that He would virtually destroy Job's life. Okay, so essentially, you've taken clothes from the poor, you've turned away widows, you've taken land that doesn't belong to you, but because you have the power, because of your wicked heart, you've done all these things. Okay? So is this profitable to God? Is it profitable to God? Now, are you really thinking that because of your power and of your esteem and of your own wisdom, that God will look at you and say that you're worth keeping? Okay, so essentially what Eliphaz is saying is that you think you built yourself up in your mind that you can't even see that you're wicked. Okay, and he lists off a whole bunch of things that Job never did. Okay, we know that because God called him blameless and upright. Okay? So we're going to keep going. We're in chapter 22. Okay? We're going to be in verse 21 now. Okay? So again, he comes back to the same conclusion. I just want us to see it again, to replay it in our minds. Okay? And again, I want us to also see, okay, where we often believe some of these same lies that Eliphaz has been preaching to Job. Okay? Verse 21 says this: agree with God and be at peace. Thereby good will come to you. Okay? We see that karma idea again, that do good and good will come. Do bad and more bad is going to come. Okay? Receive instruction from his mouth and lay up his words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be built up. If you remove injustice far from your tents. So stop doing the bad. Run towards the good, and God will do good to you. So again, we come back to this problem that we have in Job. We come back to this problem of why bad things happen to good people. Why bad things happen to good people. Because Job, for all the accusations of his friends, has not done a single thing that they accuse him of being as wickedness. Okay, all the wickedness that they claim against Job was not done by Job. He's called blameless and upright by God. Okay? So God is allowing these bad things to happen to a blameless and upright man. Okay. Now, what I want us to do now is I want us, in the little bit of time, I want us to look at Job's response to Eliphaz. Okay, so go back to chapter 6. Okay. And I want us to just remind us of a couple of things before we move forward, okay? We talked about some of the limitations that Job has just in his predicament, okay? We talked about limited scope, how we all have, as human beings, we have a limited scope of both eternity and even our own lives. We have a limited scope of that. Okay, that scope is affected and even more limited by our pain, by our circumstances, by our emotions, by our attentiveness, all of these things. Okay, so Job is limited. But one of the key ways that Job is limited is in revelation. Okay, so Job is limited in the revelation of God to humanity. Okay, so Job doesn't have the scripture to go to and turn to and say, okay, this is why maybe this is happening. This is the character of God. This is bad things do happen to good people, and this then is why, because we have examples of it in our scriptures. We have that to be able to go to. Job does not. Okay? We have pastors and churches and bookstores full of books that speak to this problem. Okay? Job had none of that. Okay? And most scholars believe that Job wasn't even written by Job himself. It was written hundreds of years later than put down as it had been passed down by oral tradition. Okay, so it was put down later by another scribe wanting to keep this intact for future generations. But this was probably even before the time whenever nations started writing things down. Okay, this might have even been before the time of the nation of Israel. Okay, so this is predating. So Job has nowhere to go to find out more about God. Okay, so he's limited in revelation. We're going to see that here in chapter 6. Okay, in chapter 6. Okay. Okay, so 24. Okay, 24. This is kind of Job's response to Eliphaz's argument about him being wicked. He says this: teach me and I will be silent. Make me understand how I have gone astray. How forceful are upright words. But what does reproof from you reprove? Do you think that you can reprove words when the speech of a despairing man is wind? You would even cast lots over the fatherless and bargain over your head. But now be pleased to look at me, for I will not lie to your face. Please turn, let no injustice be done. Turn now, my vindication is at stake. Is there any justice on my tongue? Cannot my palate discern the cause of calamity? So what he's saying here is this. Listen, if I've done wrong, point it out to me. Okay? Prove by my life why this is happening. Okay? But he's going to say something. I'm trying to see where I marked it. Sorry, it may have actually been the next one. Okay. Okay, in verse 16. Chapter 7, verse 16. Job says this, I loathe my life, going back to his lament. I would not live forever. Leave me alone, for my days are a breath. What is man that you make so much of him, and that you set your heart on him? Visit him every morning, and test him every moment. How long will you not look away from me, nor leave me alone till I swallow my spit? If I sin, what do I do to you, you watcher of mankind? Why have you made me your mark? Why have I become a burden to you? Why do you not pardon my transgression and take away my iniquity? For now I shall lie in the earth. You will seek me, but I shall not be. Okay, so hear what Job is saying. Okay, because he says a lot of words just kind of mean something pretty simple. Okay, for such a great God, why would you care about one little man? Okay, because here's, again, in Job's thinking, Job would be thinking similarly to his friends. Okay, so his concept of God and justice and all of these things is similar to his friends, except for that Job has lived a blameless life. So in Job's perspective now, his ideas about justice now must shift because he has been blameless and yet calamity has come upon him. You follow what I'm saying? So Job probably, if it had happened to anybody else, if this same thing had happened to him, he would probably be sitting with the other two friends, with the friend who is now suffering, and saying the exact same things to them that they are saying to him. You follow me? Okay? So Job has the same framework that his friends are dealing with, but now he understands that that cannot be true because he has been just, he has been right, he has been blameless, and yet all of this is happening to him. Okay? So what he says is this, if God is attacking me for no apparent reason, why would such a great God even care enough to do this to me? Okay. That's what we're talking about in Job being limited in his revelation of God. Okay. Because what we have seen, what we talked about all the way back in week 1, what we talked about is that God, in doing this to Job, shifts Job from having heard of God to now feeling he's seen God face to face. Okay? And when we all agree that that's a better place to be, that's a better relationship to be in, is just having heard of somebody and then being able to see them face to face. Okay, so this is for Job's good that he goes through these things, but Job doesn't see that because he's limited. And his limited revelation says of God, God, if you are so great, if you are so vast, why would you care about a good man and do this to him? Because what Job knows about God is that God allowed this to happen. God was orchestrating all of this. But why would the great God care and choose to torment a righteous man? Okay? And he even goes so far as now he kind of just jumps the other way. Even if I did sin, again, if you're so great, why does it matter to you? Okay. So we're beginning to see Job's limitations as far as revelation about who God is, okay? Because if we know anything about God and His holiness, as we talk about over and over in here, God and His holiness is that any disgrace of God's glory is worthy of heaven. No matter how small it may seem to us, it is the greatness of His glory that is really what is at stake, not how small our sin would be against Him. Okay. Chapter 23, again. Job has been another topic that Job has brought up several times with other arguments. We'll talk about these later as we progress through his friends. But something else that Job has brought up is he has asked for a courtroom where he could sit and there be a judge over him and God. Okay? So essentially what he has asked for is that there be some greater power than God so that he could come and present his case against God as to why he didn't deserve for these things to happen. Because again, Job is working from the framework that good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. Right? So Job has continually asked if only there was somebody higher than God that could judge between us, and there's some courtroom where I could present my case of how good I've been and how I should have been given good from God, but instead I get evil and now God is guilty of injustice. Okay, he's more careful with his words than that, but that's essentially what he's saying. Okay, so here at the end, especially at the end of Eliphaz's second argument, Job again brings up some of these things. Verse 2, chapter 23. Today also my complaint is bitter. My hand is heavy on account of my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, him being God. Well, if I knew where I could find God, then I might come even to his seat. I would lay my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know what he would answer me and understand what he would say to me. Would he contend with me in the greatness of his power? No, he would pay attention to me. There an upright man could argue with him, and I would be acquitted forever by my judge. So again, I want you to hear Job's perspective of God and his own righteousness. Okay, because in this moment, Job is not relying on the righteousness of God imputed to him that makes God say of him, he is blameless and upright. He is trusting the works that he has done to be taken to God, and he would be acquitted. Okay, so what Job is saying here is that I am upright enough that I could go and stand before God, present my case to him, because there is no higher judge. So I've got to go straight to God. And when God looks at the evidence, he would acquit me of this wrong, and he would heal. He would restore. Okay? Again, Job is limited in his revelation of who God is and how God works. Because listen, what we're going to see here in a minute is that Job's perspective is on this life and this life alone. So if we're going to get anything good, it's going to be here. Okay? If we're going to be comfortable, if we're going to enjoy God's favor, it's going to be here and now. And if we're not enjoying that, then we must not be with God. Okay. He continues on to talk about his own righteousness. Okay. And then verse 14. Verse 14, he even gets really close to accusing God. He says this, for he will complete what he appoints for me, and many such things are in his mind. Therefore I am terrified at his presence. When I consider, I am in dread of him. God has made my heart faint. The Almighty has terrified me. Yet I am not silenced because of the darkness, nor because thick darkness covers my face. It's chapter 24. Why are not times of judgment kept by the Almighty? And why do those who know Him never see His days? Some move landmarks. They seize flocks and pasture them. Okay, then he's going to talk about all the wickedness that men do. And then in verse 12, he's going to kind of sum it up. From out of the city, the dying groan, and the soul of the wounded cries for help. So he's talking about all the wickednesses, all the bad things that happen, and how people cry out to God for help. But what does God do? Yet God charges no one with wrong. So with all the progression that Job has gone through, he's now moved to the spot that God doesn't even punish wickedness. Okay, so God has moved from not just being a God who punishes goodness, but now He doesn't punish wickedness. So it's been reciprocated. That God doesn't just punish those who do good instead of giving them good as He ought to do. Now He looks at the wicked being done, and instead of doing bad to them and stopping them, He gives them good as well. Okay? So now God is not just unjust to the good and still punishes the bad. Now God doesn't punish anything right, and everything is flipped on its head. Okay? Now, okay. Verse 18. Okay, chapter 24, verse 18. We're going to see another limitation, okay, of the revelation of God to Job. You say, swift are they on the face of the waters. Their portion is cursed in the land. No treader turns toward their vineyards. Drought and heat snatch away the snow waters. So does Sheol those who have sinned. The womb forgets them. The worm finds them sweet. They are no longer remembered. So wickedness is broken like a tree. So he's talking about the arguments of his friends now. Okay, what he's quoting is the argument of his friend, that the wicked always go down to Sheol. Okay? He continues on. They wrong the barren, childless woman and do no good to the widow. Yet God prolongs the life of the mighty by His power. They rise up when they despair of life. He gives them security and they are supported, and His eyes are upon their ways. They are exalted a little while and then are gone. They are brought low and gathered up like all others. They are cut off like the heads of grain. If it is not so, who will prove me a liar and show that there is nothing in what I say? Okay, so here's what he's saying. Okay? And this is, again, the limitation of Job's revelation of who God is. Because what he's saying is that, listen, life is what it's all about. Okay? So what we get in this life is all we're going to get. Okay? This is Job's perspective. Now, do we find anything wrong with this thing? Is there something wrong with the thinking that this is all there is? Yes. Yes. Something wrong with that, right? Okay? Because for much of Hebrew history, okay, and really the history of mankind, okay, Genesis chapter 3, we have the first prophecy that there would be a Savior. Okay? And that the Savior would be born of woman and would restore what went wrong in the fall. Okay? Now, progressively, as this continues to grow and as this continues to develop, as history plays out, but for centuries upon centuries, they were always looking for one man to fix what's wrong in this life. Right? There was somebody that was going to be born that was going to fix what is wrong here. To fix that. Okay, so this is why the disciples, whenever Christ comes, were looking for an earthly king. Somebody who would conquer the Romans and restore Israel to power. Why? Because their concept was limited to this life and this life alone. Okay? Now there are really kind of complex ideas about the afterlife. I mean, not that they didn't believe in an afterlife, but there wasn't a whole lot of revelation about it. We get that a little bit more in the New Testament, okay, as men begin to journey to heavens and everything like that. You know, we have a couple of the prophets who talk about God's glory in the heavens and different things and going to different parts, but we don't have a vast, it's not a part of the theology, essentially, okay, which is why at the time of Christ, the Sadducees and the Pharisees are still arguing about whether or not there was a resurrection of the dead. Okay, so there's always been this issue with whether this is all there is or if there's going to be more afterwards. Okay, so what I want to do now is I just want to talk for a bit. Okay, I want to talk about us for a bit. Okay, just a very short while, and then we'll be done. Okay. But we just need to talk about a couple of things. Okay? Now, I think there are very few of us in here who would have the awareness to say these words, that my life, my happiness is built in this life. We don't say that with our mouth. Why? Because it's not a Christian thing to do. It's not a church thing to do. Why? Because we're always looking forward to heaven. Heaven is where everything really is. But you know, this stuff isn't worth anything. It's all going to pass away. This body's going to pass. And we talk like that. But here's the thing. Okay? And this is what we need to take away from Eliphaz's argument, the arguments that the rebuttals that Job brings. Because we often tend to look at things similarly to the way Job does. And we all have bought into the lie that by doing good, good should come to us. We go to church so that our conscience will be clear. We go to service providers so that we feel good because we help somebody that we are better than, essentially is what we mean. Okay. We've helped somebody. We do good things so that we feel good. You look at the motivation that we have to obey our parents. Okay? As teenagers, we obey our parents not because we love our parents, but because we don't want to get in trouble. So we do good so that good will be done to us, because we know that a happy mommy and daddy is better than an angry mommy and daddy. Yeah. Okay, at school, we behave at school, not because we love our teachers and love being at school. No, we do that because we know things go well for good kids. Right? We be good so that good happens to us. We do the same thing with God. We do the same thing with God. We go to church, we go to camp, we go to Disciple Nows. We have a Bible, even though we don't read it, but we probably know John 3:16. So we do those things, and we hold those up to God and say, God, I do these, now you be good to me. And we bought into the lie, even though we won't say it, even though we don't say it, we bought into the lie that everything, that the entire universe revolves around our 75 to 100 years on this planet. So everything we work towards is to make our life better here. That's why you're in school. That's why you work hard at school. Some of you. That's why you treat your parents or teachers the way you do. Or bosses if you work. Everything you do is done to make this life livable. We have bought into the lie. Listen, sometimes we don't even realize it. We don't even realize it. I buy into this as well. We buy into the lie that as long as we are doing good, good will happen to us. Again, I always want to remind us of the prevailing theme in Job. This life is not about us. nor are we given just for this life. But there is an eternity that is, and we were created for. And that God, even through hardship, suffering, pain, is wanting to reveal Himself and His glory.